Hello and welcome. Today's audio is going to be another journal audio, and I mentioned before that I may begin to do a few more journal type recorded audios, and I hope, as well as it being maybe some form of entertainment or some form of connection, hopefully there will be some discussion on the practice of being mindful, the practice of being present, the practice of stepping out of the mind. So I've been meaning to record a journal audio for the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. Sometimes the way things go, life happens, and we may have ideas or plans, but for one reason or another, things may take a bit longer than what you may expect. So, this past weekend, I again went to the beach, and for those of you who follow me on Instagram, a few weeks ago I posted a picture of the sea, and I wrote some poetry along with that as well. And again, with this particular beach, I took a picture, but as of yet, I haven't posted or written an accompanying poem. I do have a few lines in my head of which came to me while taking the picture, but again, I wasn't able to write it there and then. I usually like to post immediately to Instagram if I do decide to post on a certain day, and the same goes with these audios. I tend to record these audios and then immediately upload them as well. So I went to the beach with my dad, and I have a very younger brother who is 8 years old, and I have a stepmom as well. And so I was running a little bit late this past Saturday morning, and again, I used that experience as a lesson, or I incorporated that experience of being late into my practice. Now, when you are running late for something, often the mind will start rattling, shaking in your head, because it wants to be there or already, which is why often when you are running late, everything is done in a huge hurry. So you get in your car, you realize you have forgotten something, so you hurry back into the house, quickly out of breath, grab what you've forgotten, hurry back to the car, start the engine, while wrestling with the seatbelt. And then you are faced with traffic, wishing it wasn't there, accelerating towards the car in front of you, knowing full well that would not get you to the destination any sooner, but it's all about appeasing the worried mind of being late. And the stories that begin, the story of the people you are meeting are going to be upset or angry or not understanding, the story of your self-image of being somebody who's always on time. So everything done, actions taken are done in a hurry to try and ensure that you please the mind. Now, when I was running late, I started to feel these things. I remember a thought in my head that said, I'm somebody who's always punctual, I'm reliable, but I'm running late. So I began to hurry. And there's a difference between hurrying unconsciously or hurrying consciously. Now, if you are hurrying unconsciously, everything is done in a state of stress. The mind wants to be there already. The mind wants to be in the car already, but still you are gathering your things. You're tying your shoelaces, but the mind is wanting to be on the road so you can get there as soon as you can. Or perhaps you can beat the time and get there maybe with a few minutes to spare. Or not quite get there too late as to upset or let your self-image down. So I was aware of this thought in my head that I'm reliable, that I like to be punctual, and I simply allowed the moment as it was, which was that I was running late. I knew if I was to leave the house now, I would not make it in time to the agreed time. So I took action. I didn't worry, I didn't stress. I just simply removed my phone, sent a message to my dad, simply saying, I'm running late, but I am leaving now, and I will be there soon. So I didn't include any story of why I was late. I could have, perhaps, added some details, but at the time I didn't think it was necessary, and I was, I guess, hurrying consciously, so I quickly wrote the message, packed my bag, and began to drive. On the journey there were some extra delays, so something else I could incorporate into my practice, or another lesson I could learn. So my mind again switched on, and it was thinking, I'm going to be very, very late, not just a little bit late. So for a short amount of time, I was in a state of worry and stress, thinking I'm going to be extremely late now with the traffic. So again, I took action. I thought of another route to get there, and when I went to go that separate route, there was traffic that way. So in that moment, there was nothing for me to do but surrender. And that's to surrender to what is happening right now. I'm in my car, and the traffic will move as it moves. Because you often see, or I've often experienced, and perhaps you have too, when a frustrated driver is talking to the traffic, it's saying, come on, come on. The driver may sigh or may even swear at the traffic. And that just is simply a human condition of the mind to want to be somewhere, that this moment is not sufficient. I want to be there already. And things like talking to the traffic, swearing, all these types of things are simply the mind trying to cope. Or the little me trying to cope with living up to an expectation, or resisting the presence, resisting to what is. That may be a slightly better way to interpret that. So, when I arrived, I may have apologized that I was late. I don't quite remember. But I do remember saying that there was some traffic on the way, and that prevented me getting here sooner than expected. And I didn't have any expectation. For example, I didn't have an expectation that they would understand, or an expectation that they may be angry. I simply stated what happened, and I didn't have any thought about what the reaction would be. In this case, it was absolutely fine. I think my stepmom may have been a little bit annoyed, or not realizing why I was late. And of course, if you imagine their perspective, they wanted to leave early for the beach, perhaps to avoid traffic and to spend more time there. So I was I was aware of that also. And I find it's often strange when I join my dad, my stepmom, and my younger brother. I almost feel like it's a strange dynamic, like I am intruding in somebody else's family, because I'm 33 years old and here I am in a car with my dad, my stepmom, and my 8-year-old brother. So, again, when this feeling arises, I simply just let it dissolve. There's nothing to really work out, there's nothing to remedy that thought. It's simply a thought. So I just accepted what is, that here I am, sitting in a car, and the car is being driven. Nothing more. Because I do find when the mind tries to resolve certain thoughts, it can certainly take a lot of energy to try and remedy a uncomfortable thought in your head. And many times the thought does not need to be worked out. It just simply is. Midway through the journey, my brother was already making requests to go on certain rides, requests to play certain games, and this gives me a chance to simply observe a mind, an ego that's in full flow. And I say that with love, not judgment. I simply acknowledge the condition of the mind, especially as a child, where the ego is getting stronger, wants, desires, the desire for pleasure, and the pain that comes with that as well. So, one thing I realised when I got to the beach, that I didn't bring my sandals, as I wasn't expecting there to be any sand at this particular beach. So again, instead of creating a story, instead of thinking I should have brought my sandals, why did I forget my sandals? I simply removed my shoes and socks and went about my way walking on the sand. Often when I go to the beach with my dad and the family, we often have lunch quite quickly and then we enjoy the rest of the afternoon. So that's exactly what we did. We picked a nice spot And this particular beach was quite wide, so there was a lot of sand and distance between the waves and where people were sitting, and it was a very long beach as well. I couldn't see where it ended, the stretch of sand. I could only see colourful dots in the distance of people. And again, while we had lunch, my brother was already half eating his lunch and half digging the sand, and I heard my dad shouting at him. And one thing I'll mention here is that there may be moments of silence because I am speaking from a place that's outside of the mind. And I am almost allowing the words to come. So sometimes there may be silences, and this is not me waiting, trying to work out what to say next. It's simply just being until more words are formed which will be spoken. So it's a little bit strange to explain, because if I was telling this story and I was identified with the mind, then the story would most likely be over by now. And I would probably be telling you another story, I'd imagine. The mind likes to tell stories, and complaining and unfairness and when I mean complaining, I don't simply just mean a huge reaction to something, a huge negative reaction. It can be simply sometimes a few words. That's all it takes for a story to be formed on the mind. So after lunch, I walked out into the sea and I simply stood and allowed the waves to wash over my legs. And all I did was just be. I looked around, I observed others playing, splashing one another. I observed boats. I could feel the sharpness of the sun beating down, and I used this moment just simply to be. And I stayed in the water for maybe an hour. And soon my younger brother came and found me, and often we like to play with the football, and most recently he enjoys the game of seeing who can hit the ball the highest he often likes to make things into a competition, and I often try and not make things in a competition. I often say to him that it's not about who wins, it is about having fun. And maybe that will sink in at some point and he may understand what I was trying to say. So after playing on the beach, we packed up our things and I accompanied my dad to put our belongings back into the car, and then we walked along the boardwalk of the beach, and already thoughts were coming into my head about what was about to happen. So you can imagine a young child walking, and there are many attractions, ice cream shops, trampolines, donkey rides, arcades, and often it becomes a almost tug of war where my younger brother is wanting to play, wanting to do everything, always more. So he has an ice cream, and instead of just enjoying the ice cream, his mind is looking for what's next. Okay, so after the ice cream, what more pleasure can I get? And I noticed in that moment that he probably wasn't even enjoying the ice cream. His mind was searching for more. What more things can I do? And as we walked along the boardwalk, I dropped the thoughts I had. Whether it was true this would happen or not, my only concern was just simply walking. So I observed the people around me. I observed the shops we walked past. And yes, sooner or later, this played out as I thought it would do. And I remember just simply acknowledging that without any complaint. I wasn't thinking, oh, here we go again. He's going to ask for everything and my dad's going to get angry. I simply, again, just allowed. I was simply walking. I could hear their voices. I could hear my younger brother complaining that he wants an ice cream, and my dad saying that we can have one later, that he wanted to look around first. So I simply allowed this just to unfold. It wasn't my concern. And again, if I was in my mind, perhaps I would be complaining internally that why do they have to do this all of the time? Why does this child have to always want so much? And I could certainly create a lot of suffering, and I will say that it wasn't pleasant. I would rather that I didn't hear the anger, or I didn't hear my brother wanting so many things and yelling for things, but that's fine to prefer, to have a preference, but in that moment, the only choice was either to surrender or to suffer. And we can look at many life situations, and often there'll be three things that can be done. We can suffer in that situation, we can surrender in that situation, or you can take action in that situation as well. So it's not simply that you allow everything. For certain things, action will happen. And it's not often a case where you have to work out what to say or what to do. That doing will arise within you. Similar to if a child is walking on a wall and he was about to slip, or you can see that maybe he was losing his balance, you would simply reach out and hold their hand, stabilize him. It wouldn't be a question of, is he okay? Should I do this or should I not do this? Often when you are in presence, when you are in alignment of what is happening, often actions happen instinctively, not on a conceptual level of if I do this, then perhaps things may calm down. Often all of that is wrapped up in intuition and what needs to be done. If anything needs to be done, it will be done. So, I hope you don't mind this, I imagine, long-winded story, but I guess this is not a story to thrill you. It's simply a telling of my day, and perhaps some examples that I too can learn from, and maybe something you resonate with as well. On Sunday, so that would be yesterday, I will look to upload this audio after I'm finished, so we can all pretend it's Monday, still today. If you're listening to this in the future. Sunday I visited my uncle and his partner, and I already had fears and worries that it would be a difficult visit, a difficult afternoon, as my mind was telling me my uncle and the partner, they were just simply unconscious. My judgmental mind was telling me. And it may have been true. On a deep level, I understood that they were very intelligent people on a mind level, and they identified very much with the mind. So often I would hear lots of surface level conversation about the mind, and often I would hear many complaints about certain people, stories, and there would be judgments about people, name calling. But again, I made the decision to simply be present as much as I could during that period of time. And for me, I find social gatherings or social situations where I would be talking to other people a little challenging. I often come away from those situations feeling regret or feeling even angry at myself. And of course, this is me in my mind talking about the ego called my name. And often the anger would arise from me talking too much, or there's perhaps something I said that I wasn't happy with. And this happened while visiting my uncle and his partner. I remember talking about not so much my journey into being present, but my understanding, because that's all we can talk about when it comes to the present moment, is just simply talk conceptually about it. And I often use many metaphors, and I remember saying that the mind is simply a toolbox, and my uncle's partner began to laugh, and part of me sensed that the laugh was not from the laugh was more directed at me and what I said, in perhaps I can't think of a lighter word than the word stupid. That what I said was not true, and which made them laugh at how perhaps ridiculous that statement was. And I realized soon after that, perhaps they were right. I'm not sure. That the mind is simply just a toolbox. Like they said, it could be so much more. And again, I allowed that. I didn't try to defend my point of view. Again, I was aware, as soon as I had said that statement, the mind is a toolbox, that it didn't ring true, that those words were said from the mind. The words were said to try and get him to understand, which is a desire of the ego. To have somebody, if you're trying to explain something to somebody, to try and get them to understand, the mind must get the other person to understand my point of view. So I certainly experienced times when I was in my mind, and at times I caught myself, like that example, where I may have said too much or said things that weren't necessary. But overall, I did enjoy the visit. And I must say, with all of my talk about being present, there is something from talking from a place of truth inside of you that it almost pierces the other person. And I don't mean that in an aggressive way, but they can sense the truth in the words you are saying, that they come from a deeper place than just simply talk. I think this may be the longest story for something that's for the smallest amount of events that have happened. But I'm enjoying the freedom of this, where I have no expectations. It's simply a freedom. I am talking from a place of stillness. So that was my weekend. And my mind did try and analyze the events of yesterday. Often when I go through a certain event that I feel I may be uncomfortable, my mind tries to analyze things afterwards. How did that go? Did I say anything I shouldn't have said? It tries to work out things, and besides the line about the mind being a toolbox, I didn't really analyze it too much. Feel free to let me know how your weekend is going, or perhaps your journey of being peaceful. I know a lot of this channel is around being present and being mindful, but feel free to comment also on anything you're doing for your own well-being. And of course, if you would like to share anything about your journey, then I'm sure other readers would appreciate that as well. And again, I hope you are not waiting for the next word to be said, that these silences are equally as relaxing as hearing some soft-spoken words as well. So perhaps we should have a few moments of stillness right now. thank you for joining me today. I will look to upload another audio very soon, perhaps tomorrow or in the coming days when the time comes for me to sit down and record another audio, whenever that happens. I would certainly like to perhaps pose some questions that may allow you to begin your understanding of being present, of being at peace, the natural peace that is behind thoughts. That's something that I have in mind at the moment. But we will see what happens in the next audio. And until then, I'll speak to you very soon.